Hi everyone, welcome to the Sunday Social. So we've got an interesting topic for us today, which we definitely need a lot of support in the comments section, whichever way you're looking at. But before we dive in, let's introduce my panel. I've got Todd from TikTok Talk on Instagram. Got John from Tea and Tickers below.
Hello, how are you doing, everybody?
Hey, John. And then we've got Pete from Pete McConville's channel.
Hey.
Should we do a wristwatch check then to break the ice to kick it in? Pete, do you wanna go first? What are you wearing?
Yes. I hope I can get this to work. I am wearing my new Jaguar Cult Polaris green dial. It comes on an absolutely stunning green rubber strap, but I like the contrast with the sort of brown kangaroo leather as well. So I'm experimenting with that.
Very nice.
So that's that's going to be on my wrist pretty much every day for a couple of weeks, I think.
Fair enough.
John, do you want to go next? What are you wearing?
So this has been on my wrist probably for the last don't know how many months and will continue to be and years to come. Tuna Pelagos FXD 2021 model, the first one. Absolutely stunning watch. I've worn other things recently, but it doesn't take long to get this thing back on the wrist again. Super love it. Absolutely love it. Honest.
Go on.
Yeah.
Go on, Todd. Well, you're up next. What are you wearing?
I brought a special one just for Sam because he's in Orlando. So this is a Citizen Eco Drive Mickey edition moon phase. I don't know if I can get it to show up well there, but this is just a fun watch. I thought I would wear today, so it's a fun one.
Yeah, no, I like it. And then I will. I've had like a big week, so this. I was very kindly sent a water bottle from Christopher Ward for. It was my birthday on Friday, so I suppose this is kind of like a birthday live stream. So I got a bottle from Christopher Ward, but they sent me the bottle. But then, as a little extra, they also sent me the Bel Canto to go along with the bottle. So I very kindly got a review copy. This isn't. I don't get to keep this one. A review copy of the Bel Canto, which we've been talking about it a lot on the show, and finally got my hands on this. Just marvel of engineering from Christopher Ward. So I'm going to review it for a week. And then I'll try and film a review. So in about a week's time, I should try and film. I will try and
include that in the topic tonight, can't we? Because it's a limited edition model.
Exactly.
That's great segue. Yes, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I've totally thought of that already.
Really? No. I like it.
Oh, thank you very much for the super chat, Podcastage. Thank you very, very much for the super chat. Very, very. Thank you. Very, very grateful. Thank you. Well, let's just see who else is about. Actually, we've got. Let's just say, Kevin. Thanks for tuning in again. Bill, thanks for joining in. Mark, thanks for tuning in. Well, tonight's topic is going to be all about limited edition watches, and the title is. I put the title as "Are limited edition watches good for the watch community or not?" And I'd like to say that I think there's been more limited editions recently, but I think it's just been consistent. What kicked this off is I've been looking for this G-Shock, so a limited edition new G-Shock, which is their 30th anniversary one. Let me just pull it up just to show everyone. And so on the Casio's website, it's basically been like coming soon. And then they sent an email on last week saying, you can apply to enter a competition to win the opportunity to buy this watch. So I actually had to put in all my credit card details. They put a hold on my credit card for the full amount. And then it got drawn, and it said if you got drawn, you basically would charge your credit card. And they were just like, sorry, you didn't win. And then Hodinkee the next day listed them just for purchase on there. So I was like, well, what's the point? What was the point of doing like the limited edition competition, making people think it was like an exclusive to win like a set number of limited editions, and then just have them just for sale on Hodinkee? So I thought that was really weird. But anyway, that's my rambling intro to this. But I'll pass it up to panel because Pete, I actually sort of got this topic a little bit off you, or you agreed that this would be a good topic. So, do you want to kick this off? What do you think of limited edition watches? Are they a curse or are they a beneficial?
I think limited editions. I think limited editions are fantastic, and
Ooh.
I've ummed and ahed, and I've very definitely changed my mind on this. About 2 years ago, I did a video railing against limited editions and how I thought that they were cheesy and cash grabby and all that sort of stuff. A lot of the things I suspect people are going to say right now, right up until I realized that a lot of the watches I had were limited editions, and even more than that, those watches would probably not have been made if they were not limited editions. And that's why I started to think limited editions are fantastic because they make more watches. And what's bad about that? It's really simple. That's the essence of my argument. If limited editions give us more watches to buy, they are all good. And I will hear nothing bad said against them.
Okay. Well, actually, Peter, another.
You may hear something bad said against them.
Yeah, another Peter has put limited edition watches are usually an admission that they don't expect to sell very many, but it's supposed to be that way. So you've got the counter argument for that, Pete, I guess, which is limited edition watches allow watch companies to experiment with ideas within like Starbucks might do for like a limited edition drink, and then
absolutely
it catches on. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic.
Okay, so that's I don't know, Todd. What do you think on this?
Well, so I told you I'm on two sides of the fence. I agree pretty much with everything that Pete just said. However, I do struggle with when someone says so Seiko is classically known for being, this is a limited edition of 8,000 pieces. That I've seen limited editions that were 2-3 years ago. I can still get them like even on Joma Shop or something. So that doesn't seem like it's truly a limited edition. Now, a true limited edition, like we were talking about with the Bel Canto, yes, because what's fun about that, especially for the community, if you're a collector, and you're like, oh man, I wish I had gotten that one. I did that just recently, and I was like, I chased that piece. And once you get it, now it's fun. And I think it is good for the community because it kind of creates this constant, that piece never dies. It's always chased after, and the people who want it will seek it out. But when it's artificial limited edition, that's the only place where I find, like what Pete said, what people will say is a cash grab. Like, I'll say this is a limited edition piece, but it's not really. I mean, 8,000 pieces of another Seiko Save the Ocean is cool, but it's going to be available for years. It's not limited edition.
Yeah, I agree, and that's
sort of is, and it's sort of.
Sorry,
Pete, and you said a couple. You said a couple of words. Sorry, I think we're really laggy here, so I apologize.
I think there's a little delay. Yeah,
Australian internet. So, I think you are right. If you take a very community, internet, social media, we live our lives and our watch lives in this world kind of view, but you've got to remember that's not who most of those limited editions you're talking about, the 6,000 Save the Oceans, they're not limited to us because we live in this world where we see watches around the world. But they're 9 times out of 10 sold to people who walked into a jeweler's and bought one there. And there are 7,000 Seiko ADs in the world. So if that still means not every Seiko AD got one. And for the vast majority of people who walk into a shop and see that's horrible Brian May Seiko 5, that'll be the only one they ever see. That'll be, and they'll never see another person with it. And for them, it is truly limited.
Okay. Fair argument.
Yeah, go on, John. You're coming in hot here.
Okay, so I know somebody who, like Brian, who comes on my panel, who loves the Brian May one. he's got 2 or 3 of each one of the 1 and the 2, and it sold out pretty rapidly as well. It wasn't hanging around, the Brian May one. It did sell out pretty quickly. I agree with what Todd said about the Pressage. I mean, I've got, like, for the sake of limited edition where there's a few thousand, I've got a Pressage, and it says limited edition on the back of something of like number 234 of 8,000 or whatever. It's something ridiculous on the back. I disagree with that. That ain't limited edition at all. But the Belcanto, 100%. And where people say some limited editions are very slow sellers, well, Belcanto wasn't. It sold out for 5 hours, the first one, and 5 hours maximum for the second colour. So that really, and I think the good thing about that, I reckon that Christopher Ward have probably sold other watches based on that, because there were people out there who would never give Christopher Ward a second thought until they saw the Belcanto, and they either bought one or didn't buy one because they weren't quick enough. But I reckon they would have had a good look around the site and maybe bought another Christopher Ward watch based on the Belcanto being absolutely brilliant and selling out within 5 minutes, and just having other watches there which they weren't aware about, and not looking at the site before the Belcanto, just looking around the site and think, oh, I never knew they did that, and then buying one. So yeah, I reckon so. I reckon it's a good thing.
You make a good point. I jumped on the not Tiffany blue Christopher Ward, and now I really want that yellow one, and it's gone now. I really want that yellow one too.
Yeah, I've definitely
yellow.
got
It was great. It was green, the second one, not yellow.
Yeah,
no,
was
I'm
a
talking
yellow
about
one.
the Sealander.
The
special
Sealander.
edition.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Sorry. Right.
36
Right. Yeah.
36
Sorry.
mil.
Yeah. 36 mil. Yeah, they were hot. They were they flew. They flew out. Those did. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's take some. We've had some interesting comments that have come up. So first one, Mark with the comment gems. Thank you, Mark. Says some brands seem to have stopped doing limited editions. Omega, for example. And
okay.
You're right.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of an Omega limited edition recently.
They haven't put out.
What was the last
Omega
one?
hasn't put out a limited edition in 3 years.
Oh wow!
3 years. Wow. What was the last one? Was it the James
No
Bond
fans.
ones, or are we?
I think so.
Then what were?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, it was the
One
No
with the
Time to Die
007 on the
limited.
hand and all that. Yeah, I can't bother with them.
I mean, the
Yeah, it
current
was-
one's
it
limited
might have-
edition
might-
because
was-
it's 450,000.
Oh yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
you make an interesting point there, because that's what Mike. If you haven't seen our interview with Mike France, was that last week? It was awesome. And he said that
It was.
the Belcanto is limited edition because they physically can't make them in volume, because there's so many. There's like 4 different companies involved in actually making all of the different components for the watch and stuff. So they can't just like turn the dial and start producing thousands of them. So let's have a look. So we've got a couple of other comments here. So we've got limited editions are mostly designed to create FOMO, to foster hype, to create an artificial shortage and try to reduce the thinking time of purchase considerations. I think this is actually a good point. And I think Hodinkee was a particular guilty of this. They were taking ordinary watches like a G-Shock and stuff, stuff that wasn't like a G-Shock, for example. You imagine that they could probably make several thousand of them in short order if it was something. Hodinkee seemed to capture. They do it with Timex. They've got a lot better now. They used to sell stuff out like instantly. But I mean, what's everyone's view on that? That it creates that compelling event to hit the buy button, whereas instead of, I know I certainly procrastinate adding things to a cart and then taking them out and then kind of thinking about it. I'll throw that.
I think, go ahead, Pete.
Yeah. Sorry, Todd, you go.
I would say it really, again, everything's going to be on a bell curve for me on this conversation, because I think that it depends on the company. If it is Casio, it's malarkey. If it's Christopher Ward with a limited ability to create a watch, so you have to do your homework. So I don't think that the same rubric or whatever can be applied to all of them. It depends on who we're talking about specifically, because you make a great point with Hodinkee. Like, they could totally make 1 million or Casios. That's a thing. But the ability to actually produce a watch will affect whether or not I'm going to perceive that as truly limited edition or artificial limited edition.
Yeah, I'm with Todd here. I think that there is not all limited editions are created equal. Some even from big brands, I'll give them some credit, if you like, if they're trying something new, if they're or if it's a collab which is going to have quite limited sort of appeal. So I'll use my Breitling Super Ocean. So the Breitling Super Ocean, they only made 300 of this variant because it was co-branded with Ironman, and it was really sort of directed at people who have finished an Ironman triathlon. So as a result, your sort of audience for that is going to be pretty limited. So I get why even a big company, you could turn around and say, look, they could make 100,000 of them. Absolutely true. And they'd be stuck with 990,000 that they couldn't sell. I don't think we should expect companies to commit suicide, so that there'll one day be a watch we can buy. I think that is infinitely preferable to, say, the Rolex approach of not telling you they're limited, but only making a very small number, but producing vast numbers of lady Datejusts that one could buy just to get further up the list. Sorry, I couldn't help myself with that.
I was like, oh, he couldn't help himself. He had to put a Rolex bash in there.
This is speculate. It's pure speculation.
That's the thing if you want to know, like, my definition of a faux limited edition is the one where they don't tell you it's limited. They just don't make many and try and trick you into buying other things. That's the one that really gets me going. I can deal with FOMO, but I experience what I call I don't experience the fear of missing out. I experience a fear of being played, and I feel like I'm getting played by some brands. But as I said, there's a spectrum, and if you're a small brand and you're like doing like Christopher Ward, where there's you're relying on other suppliers and you've got to make a deal with them years in advance, and they've allocated you so much of their time, I totally understand why they can't turn around and just turn that on and say, we'll now make 100 of them. I'll throw a question out to the field, though. When a company does an experiment and they do something and they don't know how it's going to work, so they put out a limited edition of maybe, a couple of hundred, maybe up to 1,000, and then it catches fire and it's super popular and everyone wants one. Should the company protect the people that bought the limited edition and never make it available to everyone else? Or should they, as a good company, make it available to the people that missed out on that first one? Over to you.
Well, I'll kick this off because we had this very similar question asked, because last week with Christopher Ward, Mike got asked this question in the comments, didn't he, Todd? Mm-hmm. Like, why did they release the green so much, and will the green and blue? And he was like, no, because particularly this blue model is completely sold out. This particular blue will never be available again. And that was one of the things that Mike was very conscious of, was protecting those people who had bought the blue limited edition before. Yeah. I think that, yes, you agree with this, John. Like, you think that there is some responsibility to protect the people that buy the limited editions if you then make a full production model.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I spent a load of time on the website trying to get it, and I bought it because it was limited edition, I couldn't really afford to, but I stretched the purse to buy a $3,000 watch, and then a couple of months, years later, they suddenly bring out the whole thing out again, not limited, with the same color dial, no differences whatsoever. I'd be annoyed. Of course I would. Because they wrote me in. I bought, take for instance, I saw Matt H was putting about the FXD, about why the 2021 becomes more desirable. It's just this thing where people have the first editions of watches, and the 2021 FXD was started being made in like November, so there would only be 3 months for 2021. And I was hooked in by it, and I was extra pleased that not only got one, but I got a 2021 version. Yeah. And I've heard they're going to stop making it in 2 years' time. So if they carry on making it and make bigger numbers, I think I'd be slightly annoyed as well about it, But it's like Time Factor watches. Time Factors, they've got it, haven't they? They bring out these limited editions of watches, and they go once a month. They sell at 2:00 on a Sunday, and they just go within minutes because they've got it sussed, haven't they? With limited editions, they make so many.
Yeah,
and it just sells out.
And you make a great point, because that one is an example of what I was going to say, is that even if it's a minor change, so there's the FXD 2021, they could do a 2022, but it's a little change and it's still special to you. If it's, if they just blast out the same exact, like I love that I got my Christopher Ward C63 Sealander in that turquoise blue, and it says number 24 of 200 on it. And if they made the exact same one next year without any differential, I'd be totally bummed out that I just jumped on it.
Yeah. I mean, the FXD is no different apart from having the number, the year on the back, and because it's a military issue, if you like. That's the traditional, like 1970 Marine Nationale stuff, like MN 70 on the back. So this has got like 2020, just 21 on the back. So it's only because of the stamp on the back that it really probably means a bit extra. It's only someone like me who likes military watches,
That's not an only thing. That's an awesome thing. I'm very jealous of that watch.
All right, thank you. So thank you. Cheers.
I know Pete could care less about a Tudor, but you and I could talk.
We understand. We understand.
We've got some great comments. Thanks, everyone. We've got some great comments through. So, Podcaster was saying you nailed it. For some limited editions, there's the financial resources aspect as well. How Dinky probably didn't have 10 million to buy tens of thousands of watches at first. That's a good point, isn't it? I know Ricky at Scottish Watches talks about this quite a bit because they've done some, they did a Christopher Ward and they did a swatch and stuff like that. And there is a significant financial outlay, isn't there, for some of these watches? But I think that's more to do with perhaps the collabs, or do you think if they are experimenting with things, there's definitely a financial aspect to it from the watch company side?
I think from the watch company side,
we might have lost Pete there.
Machines, they are.
Oh, yeah. I think we're having some.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're kind of breaking up a little bit, Pete. No worries.
Yeah, sorry. I think there absolutely is a bunch of issues. We tend to think that big companies can just say, you know what, put out a different dial. But then that means they have to change their production cycle. They have to rejig everything. They have to change how they're going to distribute their watches for a little while. If Casio decide, okay, so we're going to make, 4,000 watches that are going to go off to Hodinkee, then they have to take whatever production line that was coming from, figure out, okay, so how are we going to move things around for that production? What aren't we going to make instead? And then they have to make those. If they sell, great. If they don't, they just did a huge change that not just affected the watch they sold, but also potentially the watches they didn't make because they were making this thing. Everything's a trade-off. And we tend to think like everything's free. Yeah, we tend to think like everything's free. And they can just choose to do whatever they want and make whatever they want, and it has no cost.
Yeah, it's like the opportunity cost. That's a good point, actually, that I haven't probably considered when I've been, bad mouthing limited editions in the past, or when Hodinkie's done them. So James Duffy's put, to manufacturers, limited edition can simply mean a limited production that does not stay in their active catalogue after selling through, and any FOMO and hype that follows is taken as a welcome artifact. I wonder if that's flipped in recent times, whether they've made watches to create FOMO rather than FOMO being like a fringe benefit. I don't know what everybody else thinks. I think maybe that's perhaps turned in recent years, that watches are being purposely made for FOMO.
Oh God, the hype! They know that they're going to hype. They'll they'll obviously they know us lot alike now. They can read us, and they just make it knowing that the hype is going to be, just like the blue Rolex we discussed. Absolute hype. You know what I mean? And people just went mad over that, didn't they? They knew exactly what they were doing when they bring out stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
100%.
they turned the tap off on that, didn't they, Rolex? So I wonder if that took them by surprise that how popular that one was, and they didn't want to be associated with that, or maybe it was too early point, Todd, of like protecting the people who, I think it was Pete's, wasn't it, to protect the people that did buy that watch. I don't know. What do you think, Todd, on this? Do you think it's changed recently?
Well, that's my concern. Yeah, like I'm flipping back and forth between this, and there's a comment by someone named Von Kruel where Zelos is going to be the example of a small watch manufacturer that's only going to have that level of production. Where like I think they make really cool watches, and you go, well, I'm only going to have one chance to get it. Now, I'm cynical. I see those constantly in all of the groups and on eBay. Like they do flip. But they also maintain their pricing. Like what's cool about Zelos is that like they are small production runs and they maintain their value even in the secondary market. Whereas what you were talking about earlier, I think that's my beef. When somebody like Seiko or Casio creates this limited edition of 8 or 10,000. To the consumer, it sounds like it is, and to what Pete said is true. With 7,000 distribution points, maybe there is only one in a store. But I guess I'm jaded. You're right, Pete. I don't know, because like I don't just go to the store. Like I shop every possible place before I make a purchase. So maybe I'm not a good gauge for that. So
Somebody's
I'm on the fence.
Yeah, somebody's actually made a comment. So 911 Dan has put, some limited editions are a reward for watch nuts that look at them every day.
Yeah.
So that kind of feeds into your comment, doesn't it? If you're looking at the same thing, are they trying to create that compelling event or push you over the edge with hey, you might actually like this configuration a little bit more?
There's a FOMO factor for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So Patrick, who's working this weekend, so couldn't join us, he said Doxa sort of did this, the new army. So this is going back to your comment, Pete, about if they bought out a real version of a limited edition version. And he's saying that actually Doxa did do this with the army one, different but similar release this year, if you remember. No, that's the I think that
to be honest, I think it's to be honest, I think that's a great thing. I can't applaud Doxa enough for what they did. I like the idea that, we made a very limited edition of the ceramic ones. We put that out. Some people got on those, but we recognize that this is a very popular watch that a lot of people want to get. Therefore, we got to make a version available to them as well. I think that's the best way of doing it. If you use and think of it the other way, if Doxa, a brand that generally sells in the $1,500 to $2,000, $3,000 range, they came out and made a $5,000 ceramic watch, their only way of getting an army, I mean, we'd be furious. We'd be wild. We'd be yelling at them. Who do you think you are? You're Doxa. You can't sell watches at that price. So really, going in LE is their only option.
Yeah, that's
Christopher
a good
Ward
point.
did. Christopher Ward did. They made a £3,000 watch all of a sudden, didn't they? Christopher Ward sells £600 watches, £800 watches, and suddenly they'll come out with a £3,000 one. So they've done it, haven't they? They've just come
which
out
was
with
a limited edition. Which was a limited edition.
Yeah,
but it sold out rapidly.
And that's how these companies make those jumps.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But that's how companies make these jumps.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, that, Pete, isn't it? If they're kind of testing the waters, and I think somebody who failed at this, actually, I'm thinking of the Ben Roos, when they relaunched the affectionately called the CIA watch, the Type 1 and the Type 2, they went way overpriced on that. They made it limited edition. They even had it on a Hodinky for a bit. They knocked that up so beyond like percentage wise what their normal watches are. They really, and you can still find them now. They're limited edition. You can still find them, and they've been out probably 2 years. But because I don't think people felt. So John, actually, is this right from Matt Hetcher, who says, as you know, I'm a Zero West fan, but would I pay more for a lower number than a higher one in a run of 15? No, I wouldn't. Is he alluding to the fact that do Zero West allow you to pay for a? Do you know that? Did they?
No, I don't think. I think he was saying about the point that I was saying I've got a 2021, so I've got an early. I've got an early FXD. So I explained to him that my comment is the fact is a lower year number is different than a lower number of one run, if you know what I mean. Mine's 2021 and then there's 22 and 23. It's different than having number 5 of a run of 50. That's a different thing. And of course, as I said before, it's because of the MN21 thing on the back, which is a Marine Nationale thing that makes it the nerds like me buy it, you know. So
do you think that encourages flippers, which would be the next iteration of this conversation?
Undoubtedly, yeah. The 21s are more money on eBay and Chrono 24 than a 22 or a 23. 100%, they're more money.
Yeah, Todd, and you definitely.
I think one thing.
Sorry, Pete, I was going to say we've gone straight into Mark Wheeler's comment here, which have flippers ruined the reputation of limited editions?
I think there's a factor there. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the case.
Been on Watch Your Seek. Belcanto's been on Watch Your Seek for twice the money this week. Ridiculous. Not even worn. He's not even worn it. He's actually said, taken out the box, not even put on my wrist. And his excuse was, I'm selling because I've got 2 other watches coming and I need to get rid of some. He clearly bought it for flipping. Absolute excuse. Completely. He's bought it to flip. Yeah. And I know that Christopher Ward not very happy about it.
The number of times I've heard that exact excuse in these watch groups. Oh, I have 2 others coming. I have to get rid of it. That's baloney. You just bought it to flip.
Yeah, and I mean, we live quite close to Disney World, and there's a lot of this flipping of limited edition Disney merchandise. Like you can even see in some of that when you're in the park and you can see into the stores. You can see people spreading stuff out on the floor and taking pictures for eBay. It's real crazy. But I mean, should we peel this back a little bit more? Do we think that limited edition, that flippers have killed limited editions, and do you think that companies will ever stop doing limited editions because they're being flipped, or do the flippers actually help just elevate the watch even more?
I'll feed into Pete's argument early on. He's right. The world at large, this isn't a factor, and so the flippers will continue to do well doing what they do. It only gets the rest of us where we're so focused riled up. Other people will buy right into it.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that it produces the hype, and the manufacturers will just continue to living off the hype of flippers. Definitely.
Yeah, it was funny because
I actually think.
Sorry, Pete. Go on.
I was going to say, I think it's an interesting thing. We've jumped straight into the idea of limited editions. And I think everyone's starting from the view of a limited edition is one where it's one of 8,000 or 10,000. And there's a discussion, a fair discussion around people who are, I actually think the number of those that are being released is plummeting. I actually don't, people, in the same way as everyone's thinking, Omega does lots of these things, but they haven't done them they actually haven't done one for several years. I think people's feelings are a response to what was happening a couple of years ago. Sitting down and watching what's happening right now, I think the number of people doing limited editions is falling through the floor, and they're being replaced by boutique only, online only, e-commerce only, capsule collections that are only going to run for a year, limited productions that we only put out 200 or 300 a year. Those are exploding. There are more of those than ever before. That my Jaja LeCoultre is a boutique only. You can only buy it if you physically go into a Jaja LeCoultre boutique. And here's the real kicker. ADs that sell Jaja LeCoultre, like Watches of Switzerland, are compelled under their agreements to advertise a watch they can't sell.
Oh,
Ooh.
wow.
Wow. So drag people in so they can say, you can't get one of these at the moment, but can I interest you in this? And it pulls them into the store and steers them towards another watch. No.
What I think what it is it's Richemont using Watches of Switzerland as an advertiser. People walk past Watches of Switzerland, they see the big green thing, they come in and they say, I love that, I'd love to buy it. And Watches of Switzerland have no choice but to say, I'm sorry, sir, you will have to go to the Jaja brand-owned boutique to buy that.
Yeah, that is an interesting, and you made a really interesting point there, Pete, as well, about the limited production. And I think up until the Snoopy, the latest Omega Snoopy, I don't think I ever heard a watch company expressly say that in the marketing, but Omega definitely coined. I feel like they coined the term or brought it back into the vernacular. Was this, this watch isn't limited edition, it's limited production. And I guess from your feeling is that's actually grown legs into the rest of the watch world.
Yeah. So look, I'm a Breitling guy, so I spend a lot of time looking at that website, and I just did a count. They have like 4 different ways you can buy a watch. There's plain old everyday watches. Then there's limited editions, one of somethings. And then they have capsule collections, which means this is a watch that we're only going to have available for a few years and then will go away. And then they have boutique editions where you have to go into a physical store and buy one. And they have e-com editions where the only way of buying it is through the online store. And I think that's like 5 different ways of buying a watch.
And do they particularly call this out, Pete? Do they actually?
Yeah. So
okay.
go to the top times.
Okay. Limit. Oh, there you go. Yes, you're right. Yeah, limited edition, capsule, new. I've never seen that before.
They're really explicit about what's going on.
Right, yeah.
And this kind of what Pete just said kind of plays into what was the huge quote unquote debacle, but might have been the genius of the Swatch Moon Swatch last year, where there was this created scarcity, and then you had to go to boutique only. And now they have been selling more watches that were not Moon Swatch because people were just there. It was a great marketing tool to get people into the stores.
Yeah, and that's not even limited edition. It was just limited availability.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Mad, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I always felt that felt a little bit more underhanded. I mean, maybe I've softened my position on the Moon Swatch. In fact, I've lost interest, is what it is.
Me too. I was totally going to buy like 2 or 3 of them. I'm over it.
I still want one because somebody bought me one. Someone actually paid for one for me to go and get one for my birthday. So we're paying for you to get a Moon Swatch. I've never got one yet. I keep trying. But who needs a limited edition when you can have limited availability and still get it talked about? You know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just limit the numbers available, not make it limited edition. And you'll do just as well and have just as much hype. There we go. Wheeler said, there we are.
And I think I definitely was a lot more bullish on this point. And then I explained, we had Dave from Scottish Watches on who explained the actual numbers, and that apparently they just physically can't make that many.
I don't believe that. It's coming from China. They're
struggling with that one.
A million things a minute. No chance. I mean, do they ever run out of iPhones?
Well, this-
iPhones, you can't, iPhones are like trading absolutely millions, and you can always get yourself a bloody iPhone, can't you? So I'm
Yeah, fair
sorry, but
enough.
I do not believe that a new watch for 1 minute is limited edition. It's limited to how much they can make. It's limited to how much they want to give the shops to keep up the hype.
Well, yeah, and they made a Swatch made a watch recently for Halloween, like a skull watch, and it's like, why aren't you all of the resources being put towards knocking the moon swatch out if if it really is I know there's molds and stuff like that. I know there's probably a lot more technical reasons why, but so we've got a couple more from the audience here. So Christopher Schwab says Oris does it too much. Oris does limited editions too much.
I would agree.
And yeah, you agree, Todd. Yeah. I remember the first time I was ever really annoyed with Hodinkee about a limited edition was an Oris. Actually, they made this awesome ghost. I think they called it the Grey Ghost or something. The Oris Diver 65 that was beautiful. And by the time that the press release came out, they were just completely gone. Right. And then I felt that for Hodinkee because before then, apart from a Swatch, I think Hodinkee had dabbled more in the high-end stuff, and it felt a little bit more unseemly when they were making Hodinkee limited editions of like G-Shocks and stuff like that. I know it's become commonplace now, but when Hodinkee started doing it, I think it was quite rare or not as common. And I always thought, well, what a real sneaky thing to do to make a G-Shock limited edition and then just the flippers. In fact, James Duffy's actually put that a good point here. I think we tend to project nefarious intentions onto manufacturers because they enable the nefarious intentions of flippers.
I was going to comment on that one, and I agree with him, but I don't know whether or not manufacturers are now capitalizing on that. So I'm torn.
I think they clearly are. There are some manufacturers who, and probably I'll rephrase it. Every manufacturer is probably every now and then saying, you know what, we can make some quick money by putting this one out as a limited edition. So I think everyone does it. It's there as a way to generate cash, but how often do they do it, and how does it fit with like everything else they're doing? I can't think of too many companies where I look at their limited, they've turned themselves into a Franklin Mint. For those of you who don't know that company,
that's a great analogy.
And that's where, and to be honest, that's where I hated limited editions in the first place. This idea of, we have decided we're going to create this curio that we're going to sell, and it's only going to be 300 of them. Everyone has done that a bit, but I don't know anyone who's done that. Like, that's all they do. And so that's probably why I've kind of backed off and become quite a fan of limited editions, because I haven't seen any company that I would say you've become the Franklin Mint of the watch world.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think, I mean, I'll ask your opinion on this, Pete, because I was chatting to a watch company owner, quite a big watch company this week. I'm hoping to get him on the show in next week or the week after. I'm just trying to negotiate at the moment, so I won't say who it is. But we were talking about Hodinkee, and his opinion had changed on Hodinkee, and I particularly remember my attitude on Hodinkee changing when they did that travel clock. Like, it was before travel clock Hodinkee and post travel clock, and it was a limited edition of that nonsense that really changed my view of it. And I don't know, that one seemed particularly nefarious, even though they had an excellent story about why it was limited, because it was new old stock movements, but it just seemed a little bit underhanded. I don't know.
Which travel clock was that?
I just said
go on, Pete.
It's about a $6,000 travel
assume
clock.
That was okay, I just said that I didn't feel that any manufacturers had turned themselves into Franklin Mint. I should have said Hodinkee has. Hodinkee for me is a Franklin Mint producer, and the one thing that really infuriates me about, and does make me angry about what Hodinkee has done. And it wasn't the Travel Clock marked it, but it was actually, there was an article that came out a couple of, I think it was probably about a year and a half ago, where it was a total lack of self-awareness. Someone from Hodinkee wrote an article about what all the other media companies that were trying to find a way of getting their limited editions to real enthusiasts, about what they're doing, about what Ming was doing and about what other people were doing. And in there, one of the things that I noted was, so this was a brand infamous for leveraging FOMO to getting stuff to flippers, infamous for not doing anything about trying to prevent it, writing a story about what other people were doing to try and help, whilst at the same time utterly refusing to do anything. Hodinkee deliberately sell to flippers. They do everything they can to make sure that flippers buy every watch they possibly can as fast as possible. And that was probably, that article was the moment I turned my back on Hodinkee and said, "You're dead to me."
Yeah. So John, if anyone else in the audience isn't aware about the Travel Clock, essentially this is what so Hodinkee pitched a big announcement, a big limited edition announcement, and they really hyped it for quite a while. I guess this was maybe it was 2016, 2017. And when they bought it out, it was essentially this $6,000 travel clock. And
Really?
it sold out straight away. And what really annoyed people about it was they handled it really badly. And people are like, "Oh, okay, is Hodinkee now only for elitists who can afford a travel clock for $6,000?"
$6,000.
Yeah, and then they actually came out. Todd, you remember this, don't you? They came out with a sort of like a groveling apology, really, that they felt that they'd completely missed the mark with it, which they had. It was
Hey, to Pete's, they have done it again. This just happened recently. Did you see the article where the guy, his wife was going into labor and he stopped and he went back in the house to get the watch so that he could have this watch when his son was born, as opposed to worry about everything else in the world. But they were celebrating this moment.
I'm kind of, I must be, I'm kind of on the fence about that one.
Really? Come on, his wife's getting labour. He wants to run back and get a. Come on.
No, and I suppose, and I'll say this. So one, I've had 3 kids. Well, I haven't, but I've been around when my wife did.
Right.
And one of the things
you've had 3 kids. Have you seen a doctor?
Yeah, and one of the things I'd point out is it's not as fast as people think. From that moment of, I think I need to go to the doctor or go to the hospital, you've got like half a day. You got 12 hours up your sleeve most of the time. So the idea that someone said, "You know what? I'll tell you, when I found out that my second was due, I finished a work Zoom call and then said, okay, I'll be home in a little while."
Oh, this is such a heartwarming story.
What am I going to do?
I've had 2 children, and I was not thinking about anything in the world except when that was happening. Like, I can't imagine writing an article. Here's the thing. I hear what you're saying, but he was almost making a point of making it like he was a hero for going and getting his watch.
Yeah.
As opposed to what you're saying. You're saying like, well, I had the time. No.
I wonder if we should do a poll like, would anybody dare admit that they were shopping for watches when their spouse was in labor?
Yeah.
My wife would have grabbed me by the neck. Are you leaving the car right now to get a watch?
He went back in the house to get one. That's what it was. He
Right.
was shopping. He went back to his collection to grab one. The watch that he wanted to have when his child was born.
Yeah, so he was in the driveway and he ran in.
Okay.
There you go. I'll throw it at you, Sam. I'll throw it one for you. So
go on.
Your wife's gone into labor. The baby's due probably in about 8 to 10 hours. You've just got a call. You can come down and pick up a new ceramic Daytona, but you have to be here in the next half hour. Which do you do?
Yeah, it's
That's just mean.
It's crazy, and they did. And I actually, when I got the call for this, I actually had to. Not Helen wasn't in labor, but I had to. We only have one car, so my wife takes it. So I had to get an Uber to make, quite a distance to make sure that I picked it up, because they definitely encourage you to come as soon as possible. I don't know. I mean, who knows when you're in that situation? It certainly makes for a better story than, I think, in the UK, wasn't it common to go to the pub when your wife was in labour to celebrate the birth?
That's old school. The guys with cigars in the waiting room.
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose that's a slightly better story as a Daytona. Yeah. But then I feel like you would be morally responsible to betroth the Daytona to your child when they came of age.
You have to at that point. You don't even get to keep that one.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see if we've had any more. We've had so many interesting comments come through here. Let's see. Let's just see here. So the narrator of that Hodinkee story was literally contriving the watch memory. It made me laugh.
Fact. He is correct. Contriving the story.
Yeah, and so here we go. So the whole restricted distribution thing is just trying to manipulate the market to maintain SRP, a response to Breitling previously being dumped in large numbers on the grey market. Yeah, that's what do you think of that, Pete? Because Breitling, I always thought of Breitling as, they're 30% off on Joma, and you don't see them that much at Joma shops.
That's exactly correct. Yeah, Jurassic Time is entirely accurate. One of the huge benefits to limited editions or limited releases, boutique releases, is that your ADs only get 1 or 2 watches. So they can't, if after 2 or 3 years they haven't sold them, they can't, no one's going to turn up to Joma shop and dump 400 watches, because no individual has 400 watches to dump. So yeah, Jurassic Time is entirely accurate here. This is a way of, it's the flip side of SKU control. It allows companies to have a very large number of SKUs, presenting us with lots and lots of options, allowing us to find the option that we want, but reduces the risk to the brand of having some retailer lose patience and dumping 30 of them on Joma shop. So funnily enough, I agree with the fact that what Jurassic Time has said. I just don't see anything nefarious about it. I see it as a perfectly reasonable and rational way of doing business.
Well, and I think that's the point of the conversation, right? Is this the current business model? Should we allow ourselves to be manipulated and whipped up to get it, or is it real? Like, do I have to get it because I won't ever get it again?
Yeah, and then I suppose that's another question which we won't have the answer to. But then why is Omega not doing it anymore? That would be an interesting point. Because a lot of these points in the comment are really good reasons for. They're pro consumer because it gives us a choice, but they're definitely pro watch company, aren't they? Because they can restrict they can restrict the number they make. They can make certain models more exclusive. They can maintain their SRP. So I wonder why Omega maybe doesn't do it, or like there's other companies as well. Rolex don't do limited edition, but you could argue they have limited production. But there's definitely companies that don't do limited editions, isn't there? In fact, I can't even think of one. I was going to say Hamilton, but Hamilton have done limited editions before, haven't they?
I think it's more a limited production run. I don't know if it's limited editions per se, but I could be wrong. Maybe the Murph was.
Yeah, I was thinking of that one they did with the where it was a watch, but you could also fasten it to a plane. It came with the plate that allowed you to screw it into the cockpit one. Yeah. It's
there was one they were making with that one movie. I can't remember. It was real large. That might have been one that was limited edition. The recent one with the time jumping movie. I can't remember what it was.
Oh yeah, Tenant.
The Interstellar one or the
Tenant.
Tenant one. Yeah, they messed up that Tenant watch. I mean, this is a side thing, but they definitely messed that up because the key thing that watch needed to do from the film, it didn't. The Hamilton one didn't do it.
Agreed.
So it was just basically it was just the
big chunky watch, huge.
Yeah, it's a good film, and it's exactly the same watch they used in The Martian as well. So they actually repurposed the watch from the Matt Damon
I didn't
film.
put that together.
Yeah, it's the same watch, and then they made it not do the key thing that it's a spoiler. It's a spoiler if you haven't seen Tenet, so I'm not saying what the watch does, but yeah. So
I like this one, faithful to the movie, which is also a mess.
Oh, I quite like the Tenet film. So So there you go, Pete. Brassic Time saying Pete is right. It's a business decision. It's our choice if we want to play the limited edition or restricted distribution game or not. No one, exactly. No one's forcing us to buy anything, but there's still that emotional FOMO.
Yeah.
I suppose
we'll have one watch if we were sensible, wouldn't we? We'd all have one watch.
Yeah.
We'll not have one at all until the time on your phone, but that's not the case with us,
I suppose I'll throw another question to the group. If you can choose to have one outcome, what would it be? That there are watches that you would like to buy but couldn't because you missed out on them, or a watch that you would really like was never made. Those are kind of like your two options. If you don't want limited editions because you don't want the FOMO, then people seem to expect, but I'm still going to get the watch I want. But there's every chance you won't.
Yeah, was it better to love the love?
If the Bel Canto wasn't limited, the Bel Canto, for everyone out there who's not going to get a Bel Canto or never, maybe never going to get a boy one. If it wasn't limited, it wouldn't exist. There wouldn't be one. So to cycle all the way back to this question that we're asking, are limited editions good for the watch collecting community? It all hinges on that one point. If Mike Francis says, hey, look, I can make something like the Bel Canto, but I can't make it core collection. I can only make it as a limited edition. If he then said, therefore, I will never make it, would the watch collecting hobby be better?
You make a really good. That's a great question, and I think the question creates the problem of, I don't know what the word would be, but the Bel Canto for me personally requires me to have time to save and scrimp and have that money readily available. I'm not a person who can go like, I'm going to spend $3,500 today on a Snap. So that creates a challenge for me. If it's a $500 watch, it's a different conversation. But at that price point, I'm struggling because I love the Bel Canto and I want one, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to catch one down the road. But I'm torn with your question. I think maybe what it does great for me is that now I have something to chase. I've got my white whale.
I'd like to know if anybody in the chat who's got a limited edition, would they want it to be not limited so someone else can actually get one or not if they actually own one? Like if someone's got a Bel Canto now, owned one, would they actually be happy for it not to be limited just so other people can buy one? Or are they quite happy with it? I mean, either it's a case of, if I had one, I'd want it to be limited edition, but if I had the money and couldn't get one, I think, why was it limited edition? I can't get one.
I can answer that now. I've got a couple. I can answer that. I got a couple of limited editions, and I couldn't care less whether they were limited or not. I didn't buy them,
right,
and this is a really interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't buy them because they were limited. I bought them because I wanted the watch.
Yeah.
Because you liked it, that must admit, I don't think I've ever bought anything just because it's limited edition. In fact, as it is, it might have made me be more urgent to get it in case it ran out. But it wasn't the factor. Oh, it is limited, so that's why I bought it. I bought it because I actually like the watch, and because it happens to be limited, it's maybe a bit of a bonus, but it's not the main reason for it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah. So Patrick's put here, nope, I love my limited editions. Part of the reason I love them.
There's a flip.
Oh,
Mark
right. So
Wheeler
Patrick said,
says
I bought it because it was limited, right?
Mark Wheeler has a flip of it. I'm not going to flip it, so why would I care?
Yeah,
That's
yeah, absolutely.
you know, it's the opposite exactly of Patrick's comment.
Cool. Well, yeah. I mean, is there any last words on this? Thank you, everyone, for being so so active in the comments. Awesome. Cool. Well,
my last word is I agree with Pete, and he's wrong. No.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you everyone for being so active in the comments. Thank you to everyone in the panel. Subscribe to TikTok Talk, Tea and Tickers down below on YouTube. Pete McConville, formerly of Not So Obvious Watches. Check them out. Like and subscribe to this channel as well if you like the content. And thank you so much. Thank you for the super chats, and we'll see you next time. There isn't going to be a Tuesday show, sorry, because I'm away, but we'll see you next Sunday. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social. Bye, everyone.